Welcome in, everybody. We're going to get started here in a couple minutes. All right, we'll give folks just another minute to hop in here. All right, we're going to go and get started. Be respectful of everybody's time. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar on inclusion and accessibility for virtual library patrons. I'd like to thank you for joining us. We're excited to share our perspective here at Unique for planning for virtual patrons in today's library environment. My name's Kevin Kernan. I'm responsible for basically all of our marketing here at Unique. I handle all of our external communications like newsletters and press releases. So things like the announcement for this email, all those things you read, those come from me. Today's presentation will take about 20 minutes and will be followed by a Q&A session. So if you do need to drop off at any point, don't worry. We'll send everybody the full recording later on today. If you have any questions at any point during the webinar, please just drop them in the chat section, and Josh and I will address those at the end of the presentation. Even if you can't stay to the end, pop those in there and they will get answered. Before I hand it over to Josh Neisler for our presentation, I would like to introduce Unique CEO Nicole Atkins for a few words. Nicole?
Thank you, Kevin, for that warm introduction. Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. I'm Nicole Atkins, and I serve as the CEO here at Unique. I've been at Unique for about 28 years, and as you can imagine, being anywhere for that long, I've seen a lot of changes in a lot of very exciting ways. Our main focus has been and continues to be connecting libraries with patrons and connecting those patrons to the resources and services that matter most to them. So if you don't mind, I'd like to share just a quick update with you on the four main categories of solutions that we offer today. So 'cause some of you may not be aware. What most of you probably know us for is our Gentle Nudge material recovery service. This is the service that really put us on the map. Gentle Nudge is really all about patron re-engagement. It picks up where your library's notices leave off with an extended outreach process designed to reactivate patrons who happen to be holding long overdue materials and restore access to those resources for the rest of your patrons so that no one, especially those in those marginalized groups, go without access due to another patron's lack of returning those items. We like to say that every return is a reunion because the goal is really to re-engage those disconnected patrons recover materials without any shame, and then make those resources available again for other patrons. Next is patron services. With this service, we answer thousands of phone calls and live chats 7 days a week on behalf of our library partners. We assist patrons with account questions, hold requests, immediate support, and so much more. So the patrons who reach out through those channels get a responsive, focused, and professional service that allows library staff the freedom to do their best work, which is on site and in person. Moving right along is Message B. This is our software platform that allows libraries to design and send rich, custom branded circulation notices and marketing communications over email and SMS. And these are true SMS messages that have a much higher success rate than the email to SMS tool that are included with a lot of your ILS platforms. Lastly is our newest service, which is our data and automation. This service is designed to make patron intake and retention much easier, this includes our verified borrower registration and our automated borrower renewal solutions, which allows you to issue and renew library cards completely online. A change of address service to keep your database clean and current, which we all know is extremely important, and our new mover service to help you reach those new residents that move into your community. As you can see, we are very proud of the work that we do here at Unique, and we're very grateful to partner with so many of you. And we're eager to continue to share the expertise that we've been able to develop through your partnerships and support over the years. So we want to thank you very much for your continued support. And with that, I'm going to pass the mic over to Josh.
Thanks, Nicole. I'm Josh Neisler. As Kevin mentioned, I'm a library consultant here at Unique. It's my job to help libraries optimize how they manage incoming patron inquiries. And that involves paying attention to the patterns and trends happening within the inquiries we're handling already on behalf of libraries all across the country. And as we have opportunities, sharing those insights with the larger library community. And that's really the purpose of our session today. I've been with Unique a long time. I was actually part of the original core team when we launched our patron services group 15 years ago. And I remember that a few years in, we had the opportunity to begin serving a major library out west that you would know if I said the name. And by that time, a few years into offering our patron services solutions, I was the implementation manager, and that meant I was responsible for onboarding new libraries who were starting up with the service and making sure that their launch went smoothly in those opening days and weeks of service. And that involved a lot of times like reviewing logs and just making sure that we had all our bases covered as far as the documentation that we had on hand and the scope of service that we had aligned on with the library to make sure we were answering the vast majority of questions that were coming in. So reviewing calls and chats and making sure that all of that was going to plan. And as I was doing that in those opening weeks of service with this new library, I noticed that a man we'll call Robert would contact us 3 times a week like clockwork. And as patrons do, Robert began sharing, little breadcrumbs about his life here and there in the course of those conversations. We found out over time he was a widower. He shared that his physical health wasn't great. It was tough for him to get out because he didn't feel good a lot of the time. And he wanted to actually understand his condition so that he could manage it better, be there for his children and grandchildren. He would contact us to remind him of his checkouts. You could tell he was noting them down, wanted to know their due dates, and he wanted help placing holder requests for additional items. Because of his health, he couldn't come to the library himself. So his daughter would stop by the library a few days a week after work to drop off his returns and pick up his holds. And he was very keen to make sure that process was as easy as possible for his daughter. And that went on for years, hearing from Robert 3 times a week, like clockwork, because that library was really a lifeline for him. And what we've noticed across the dozens of libraries we partner with is that there are countless regulars like Robert out there in every community, patrons we talk to and help over and over again. And it's those patrons that we want to really bring to your attention today. And so, what I want to accomplish in the next few minutes is this. I want to define what we're calling the digital patron. I want to suggest a goal for serving the digital patron. Then I want to acknowledge the challenge that goes with that for libraries, both big and small, in all kinds of contexts. And then suggest a path forward in terms of a solution and plan you can implement to ensure that this crucial subset of your patron base has equal access to the important and sometimes life-changing resources you have to offer, and is included fully in the life of your library. So, really, want to do here is wave a flag for the Roberts in all of our communities. So, what do we mean when we say digital patron? Digital patrons are patrons who primarily interact with and use the library remotely from a personal device. And for some, that's a preference. It's simply more convenient and fits better into their daily life to engage remotely. But for others like Robert, it's a necessity due to mobility challenges, their physical or mental health, immigration-related concerns, caregiving responsibilities, transportation challenges, or some other barrier that makes visiting the library in person difficult, impossible, or unsafe. These are patrons who rely on the library and its resources, yet rarely come through your doors in person. So the question is, what should be our posture, our priority, our goal when it comes to digital patrons? And the simple answer is that it should be the same as it is for every other patron. Our goal is that every patron is equally valued, welcomed, and given the opportunity to fully participate in the life of the library, regardless of how they choose to connect. So are you with me on that? I think it bears repeating: every patron equally valued and welcomed to fully participate in the life of the library, regardless of how or where they connect. Now, for most, that does mainly happen in person. Many libraries do a good job of creating warm, welcoming experiences within their walls, within their buildings. And that's your wheelhouse. That's really what you're set up to do. But for the digital patron, it primarily happens virtually. The Roberts in our communities rely primarily or exclusively on the library's virtual channels of communication and service, which raises a challenge that we should acknowledge. And that challenge is that most libraries aren't set up to include digital patrons as fully as in-person visitors as much as they would like to. And for a variety of very good reasons. You have physical buildings that house your collection and departments and service points within those buildings that you have to staff. And you ask that staff to perform a variety of duties related to serving the public, managing, maintaining, and developing your collection, running meaningful programs that individuals and families benefit from, doing outreach in the community, and so much more. And we understand that many of you are making all of that happen under very real constraints and limitations. But having said that, it does remain the case that for the vast majority of libraries, digital patrons aren't included as fully as the in-person visitors who come through the doors. And I say that not as some type of guilt trip, but to offer a solution and a way forward. And that solution is one way to better prioritize and include digital patrons is to stand up a viable live chat service. Emphasis on viable. And here's what I mean by that. Libraries I advise often tell me, we've tried live chat in the past, it didn't work for us. People didn't use it. It was tough for us to be online and make sure we could answer the chats, and it created a lot of challenges. But when I ask into the details of how they went about offering live chat, there are typically some major gaps in their execution that led to that less than desirable outcome that they saw. There's a famous quote that runs through my mind all the time in the course of my work, and it's the key to all victory lies in the organization of the non-obvious. And when it comes to live chat services, there are some fundamental details, some cornerstones, some building blocks, some pillars that need to be in place in order to produce a positive outcome for our digital patrons. And I want to share those with you. We've identified over the years 4 pillars or best practices of live chat service that, if you have them in place, will go a long way toward our goal of ensuring digital patrons are equally welcomed and included in the life of the library. And I want to share them with you just briefly. So I'm spilling the tea here, opening the curtain, and letting you know kind of what we've come to understand over the years in the course of serving libraries in the way we do within our patron services group, answering these live chats on behalf of libraries all across the country and actually all across North America. So the first pillar is deployment. And by that, I mean where and how the live chat button or window shows up on your website. So nuts and bolts stuff here, folks. When it comes to where the live chat shows up, the more pervasive the chat button is across your site, the more use it will get. And that's a kind of obvious thing, but we have seen over time that sometimes the live chat button is limited to, say, a contact page or a single dedicated live chat page within a library's website. We advise libraries that it should appear in the lower right corner. For whatever reason, that tends to attract more usage than other spots on the page. So lower right corner of every page of your main website, as well as the online catalog. And this pervasive deployment model also allows for persistent chat, by the way. So if a digital patron navigates to a different page during a chat session, the conversation won't be cut off. It'll follow them as well. And having the chat just sort of out there, readily available and noticeable on the site means that it's easy for folks to discover and give it a try. Now, what I mean by the how of the live chat button and how it's displayed is that it should be visible and functional on all types of devices, on desktop and mobile devices as well, so that we're not creating a device-based limitation. The digital patron can be using any browser on any brand of laptop, tablet, or phone, and the chat should work perfectly for them. So deployment, and then the second pillar is inclusion. And what I mean in this context by inclusion is multi-language support that allows the digital patron to chat in their primary or preferred language. Now, that doesn't mean having live chat operators for every language group that might be present in your community. This is actually just a software thing. You want to select a live chat platform with multi-language auto translation capability so that the digital patron can chat in their primary language. So say Tagalog is the language a patron prefers and speaks in. The software would translate it, their message, into English for the chat operator, who would then reply in English, and their reply would be translated by the software back into Tagalog for the patron to read. And the conversation just proceeds that way very seamlessly. So that's an important pillar that you want to have in place. And then you want patrons to know that that's available to them. So for example, some of our library partners will have their chat widget, say chat now or live chat available, and they'll rotate that through 2 or more languages so that patrons are on the site will notice this chat is for me. And that's a whole additional subset of digital patrons that now know they can engage with you in that way. So deployment and inclusion. And then the third pillar is coverage, which has 2 aspects. The first is that you got to have enough operators online to answer the chats quickly on a consistent basis. In our experience, under 20 seconds is a must, and 10 seconds or less is optimal in terms of your response time to patrons. Otherwise, tons of chats get abandoned after one message when they don't get a reply right away. And you'll really struggle also with patron adoption of the service because they just won't think that it's reliable and dependable and a go-to way to get in touch with you and get the help that they need when they need it. The logistics of that are that it's best if the chat operator isn't multitasking on other work in between chats, or at least that the multitasking is kept to a minimum. And the reason for that is you don't want the chat to become an interruption to whatever else they're doing. You want the chat to be the main thing, the main focus. And at the very least, I would say also, just a footnote here, it would be best not to have staff out on public service desks answering chats, because we know out there on the floor, they're very likely to get interrupted on a regular basis. So you want the operator or operators to be off desk, and their primary duty during that time is answering live chats. So then the second aspect of coverage is the hours that live chat service is available, because we know that when the buildings close for the day, the website is still open for business and getting traffic. So you really want to align the live chat service hours more so to website traffic patterns rather than branch operating hours, if you can, if at all possible. Now, I will say, like for most libraries, 24/7 coverage is overkill. Those overnight hours typically are going to be an area of time where you're not getting any chats for most libraries. So like 1 to 2 hours before you open and or after you close is typically the sweet spot for most libraries. So deployment, inclusion, coverage. And then the fourth pillar I want to share with you is resolution, meaning that the percentage of chat sessions where the patron's question or issue is resolved within the session itself without the need for additional follow-up or action on the part of the digital patron. Now, sometimes later follow-up is perfectly acceptable, expected, and desirable. So like when a patron has a research interest that needs to be referred to a subject matter expert who's best positioned to help them, great. That's perfect. And you want to have smooth escalation paths to make that happen so that that subject matter expert can then get back to the patron for additional info or to share some information that they've been able to uncover that will be relevant to that patron's area of interest or need. But of the inquiries that can and should be resolved on the spot, how often are we doing so during those chats? Our KPI across all of chat sessions here at Unique is that 80% should be resolved on the spot. Some of those are automatically going to be, some of that 20% is automatically going to be referred because of a scenario like the one I just described. But overall, we should be seeing around 80% of the chats being resolved on the first opportunity while we're chatting with that digital patron. Now, what we see in some states or regions is chat cooperatives that local libraries participate in. So they contribute time to that, and then they benefit from the additional coverage by kind of taking a zone defense or a networked approach to actually staffing the chat. So that solves the coverage pillar to a large extent, but not so much the resolution pillar, because many times your digital patrons are going to actually interact with someone at another library whose only tools are your website and a set of FAQs they may have access to about your library. And what that means is that there's a huge percentage of questions and issues the co-op model can't resolve because, for example, they don't have access to your ILS system to answer account questions or handle account transactions, to explain fees to a patron. That whole area of questions that patrons often have. They may also not be so familiar with your local area and locations and so on. Lots of areas where there's going to be gaps in the knowledge that a cooperative is able to then relay to the patron and resolve a large percentage of the inquiries efficiently and at a high rate. And then beyond that, I would just also say there's really no quality control under the co-op model that can be exercised to make sure your patrons experience the hospitality and sense of belonging you want for them, or that the answers dispensed are actually accurate or helpful to the patron. So those are the four pillars. And by the way, if you have these four pillars in place and you have a really robust, viable chat solution that's working well, it will, over time, have the effect of reducing your incoming phone calls, like sort of in the long term, as the chat service builds a regular audience of digital patrons, as they understand that it's reliable, as they get value from it. So it can also kind of cut into the incoming phone traffic that you're having to handle because those questions are now getting resolved over live chat, and the patron doesn't actually have to take the step of picking up the phone to reach out to you quite so often. Now, let's each think about our own libraries. Think about your library for a moment. These are some questions you might ask to help evaluate the current state of play when it comes to including digital patrons in the life of your library. What's your library's plan as it stands today to serve patrons who may not feel safe visiting the library in person? What options exist for at-risk populations to communicate with the library, again, as it stands today? Just a little self-audit. What options did that person have? Is it just to call on the phone? Is it to fill out a contact form on your website and hope that someone replies? Do they have any clarity on how soon to expect a response from you? Operationally, and in terms of service delivery, do you have a plan and expectation in place? And are you measuring that around how soon patrons should be followed up with if they do reach out via the contact form? And how well are you adhering to that? Can digital patrons easily communicate with you in their primary languages? And then how many hours per week is this coverage available? If the only option is the phone or a contact form, that's going to be limited if you're fielding those inquiries in-house to the hours the library is open max. And so that leaves lots of time, as we were just talking about with website traffic, when patrons may need help, have questions, be interested in utilizing and taking advantage of library services, but aren't able to communicate in order to make that happen. And then lastly, what do these digital patrons actually ask about? What resources are most important to them? And how might that impact, what we're doing and the choices we're making, the decisions we're making as a library from a collection development perspective and from a staff training perspective in terms of understanding. There's a whole set of questions here that trend over and over again that we're actually not super well prepared to speak to. So let's get prepared. So you have with a chat service that's actually working well, you would actually have visibility into these types of things so that you can adapt accordingly to ensure that even further you're able to welcome and serve and include your digital patrons. So summing up, our plan, the plan that we're suggesting and urging you to consider implementing in this session, is summed up this way. Dedicated live chat operators standing by to provide prompt and personalized support to digital patrons with availability aligned to website traffic to the extent possible. And again, dedicated in this context means we're keeping the multitasking to a minimum so that chats aren't interruptions, and we're answering the chats in around 10 seconds on average. And personalized means the patron can chat from any device and in their preferred language, and we're resolving the vast majority of the questions on the spot with no further steps needed on the part of the patron. And then lastly, we're available as much as possible when there's activity on the website. And all of that is so that we increase our positive impact for digital patrons, many of whom have no choice but to engage remotely. Remember Robert, the patron I was talking about earlier? One positive difference we were able to make for him as time went on was introducing him to ebooks. Our chat operator could tell, through our live chat software platform, that Robert was on an iPad. And in one particular conversation, he wanted to place a hold, but the item wasn't available in a physical copy, but there was a digital copy. And so our chat operator said, I noticed you're on an iPad, and asked if he'd be open to reading the book on his iPad. And he was open to giving that a try. So she took the time to talk him through getting the Libby app, getting logged in, and checking out his first ebook. And that opened up a whole array of resources and possibilities for Robert. Now, that's a small but positive thing. I'm sure you all have similar interactions like that daily. But what we want to do, and what we want to urge you to do, is to create the circumstances where we can stack up little wins like that to the point where on net, on aggregate, we're making a major positive impact in terms of how we're welcoming and supporting digital patrons like Robert. Now, before we get into the Q&A here in just a moment, if your library has the resources to execute this plan on your own, I would strongly encourage you to do that, because nobody's better to serve your digital patrons than you are. And I would be happy, by the way, to personally help you devise your own individualized action plan to make that happen. Now, on the other hand, if you feel like your library would not be well positioned to make this happen all on your own, it's obviously a service that we provide here at Unique to many, many libraries. Our team does an incredible job with these interactions. We operate 96 hours a week. And the service, by the way, is relatively affordable for most libraries, around $15,000 per year for most. So I would be happy to talk with you about that as well. Now, whichever category you fall into, or if you're not sure, which bucket you would go into, maybe you could pull it off on your own. Maybe it would be helpful to have some support. Maybe it would be helpful to have a blend. I would welcome you to schedule a 30-minute consultation with me. And we'll be sharing, by the way, a Calendly link where you can put time on my calendar directly, so that we can think together about how best to ensure that digital patrons in your community are equally valued and welcome to fully participate in the life of your library. And with that, we do have some time set aside here for Q&A. And so I would love to answer any questions that have come in.
Yep, folks, if you do have a question, you can pop that in the chat and I can share that with Josh. One thing that we do have is a question about you just mentioned that blend between libraries that can maybe handle some of the traffic on their own and that can't. What can you talk about that? How Unique can mesh with sort of an existing infrastructure?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there are some libraries we partner with where we actually do deploy what we call a blended staffing model. And that means the library is responsible to cover some blocks of time during the week and staff the chat during those hours. And then there are other blocks of time that are covered by Unique. Now, in some cases, libraries want to handle the chats.
I think we might have lost Josh there for a second. We're going to work on getting him back, folks. Nicole, do you have anything to add real quick while we're not working on getting Josh back? Get you unmuted here.
I really don't know what he was going to say next, but I know that he was saying, there's a way for us to work with someone with their existing platform. And we definitely have a way to be able to work with folks through their existing platforms. We do live chat here, and we help people set up with live chat here on our end. But we also do have other chat services as far as self-managed chat, where you can actually manage that within your own library as well, and we can help you set that up as well.
All right, we did get a question. Did Josh say that the pricing starts at $15,000 a year for the full service? Nicole, can you speak to our pricing model here at Unique?
That's on average. It really just depends on the size of your library. It depends on exactly how many chats on average come in. So that would be something that on average is what we're seeing, about $15,000 a year for the libraries that we have. But like I said, it could be different just depending on the size of your library, the number of chats that come in. Some libraries have more chats than others. We would really try to tailor it towards you. So that would be something that you would definitely directly speak with Josh with. He could tell you, depending on the number of chats that you currently have, and or um, there's Josh. The question came through, Josh. I was trying to answer it for you. Did you say the pricing was about $15,000 a year? And I was just basically explaining that it really depends on the size of the library and the number of chats that come in. But that's just what we're on average, what we typically see. But that's something that we would have to work with each individual library to see, like the number of chats, their volume, and those things to give you a closer estimate to what you would possibly be.
Yeah, that's correct. And that would be for the fully managed version of the
Mhm.
service where Unique is handling all of the chats all day, every day. The main thing to note there is like whatever the price point comes in at based on the expected volume, we do make it like a fixed rate per month. So it's very predictable from a budgeting standpoint. You're not going to run into overages or anything like that.
All right, thank you. We have another question here. Can you speak to the anonymity and privacy of patron information?
Yeah, absolutely. Having done this for 15 years, we're very cognizant of respecting patrons' privacy for sure, both within our internal operations, our interactions with each other, and from a data security perspective with our platform, as well as on the interactions itself when it comes to disclosing information to patrons. And in that last scenario, we take our cues and guidance from the library about how they would like us to handle um, the options available to a patron to verify their identity to us before we would disclose, any confidential information to them about their account. So we kind of manage our documentation for the libraries we partner with in a custom software knowledge-based tool that we've developed over the years. And a big part of that is capturing in granular detail the privacy policies that the library has given us, the procedures to observe, and how to execute those within the context of a live chat or even a phone call. And then that's something that we're able then to do some quality control on as well. So doing what we do at scale serving several dozen libraries, allows us to also have the capacity to regularly do quality assurance on the interactions that we're handling to make sure that we're creating the experience that we all want for the patrons, as well as following the procedure and guidelines that the library has given us in the course of interacting with the patrons, including the privacy aspect. So got to have their library card number. Is there any alternate ID that can be provided? What do we do with parents of children? What do we do with a spouse? Covering all of those like contingencies, so that the experience, so that we're following your procedure, and the experience is consistent. Whether the patron is engaging with you or engaging with us, they're going to get the same answer, and the same procedure will be followed in each and every case.
That actually dovetails really well with the next question, which is, does Unique know my library's policies, and what kind of transactions can they handle over chat?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. So this service takes several weeks to implement and launch. And the big reason for that is because we're very intentional and methodical about documenting and aligning with the library on the policies and procedures that are relevant to our scope of service. So we're very clear, one, on like, here are the types of calls we want you to handle, and here's to what extent you can take them in an effort to resolve them, calls or chats. And then here are the procedures that apply to each of those scenarios. All of that goes into that software, which we call Library Handbook. And that's something that's sort of laid out consistently from library to library. And the chats and calls that we answer on behalf of our libraries are sort of locked in to the right handbook, so that when San Diego County or Worthington, Ohio, or Capital Area District Library in Michigan or some other library, when a patron from one of those libraries reaches out to us, what's automatically presented to our operator is the correct handbook. They've got all that information at their fingertips. From that interface, that handbook interface, they're able to click into the ILS. And in terms of the types of transactions we can handle there, again, that's dependent on the guidelines and procedures the library assigns to us. But we can definitely place hold requests. For libraries that still renew materials, we can renew. If they give us latitude to grant exceptions, an extra renewal, that type of thing, we're able to do that. Some libraries do have us process fee payments, take payment for a fee. Typically we'll do that like on the online catalog if a patron's not able to, in most cases, or some libraries have sort of backdoor staff access, admin access to the online catalog where we could do that. So we're able to do that type of a thing. Certainly able to help folks with navigating your different e-media platforms and helping them check out through there, helping them reserve meeting spaces if that's permitted and appropriate. So a whole host of things that we're able to do. And then seasonally things come up as well, signing up for summer reading programming that's taking place. Tax season, many libraries offer, tax prep assistance directly or in partnership with a third party. So some libraries have us scheduling those appointments directly this time of year. So there's a whole variety of things that we're able to do. Pretty much the whole menu. It's something we could share with you or discuss if you choose to, book a consultation with us, kind of go through what we're capable of, and then match that up to kind of the areas of priority for you. To come up with like a scope of service that would be workable and would provide value, while also just making sure that where there is subject matter expertise or logistics in play for certain topics that need to be handled internally, we're making that happen as seamlessly as possible for the digital patron as well.
All right, we've got one more here. Does Unique provide the chat software and training if our own staff will be covering the entirety of the service?
Yes, we do. We do allow libraries to subscribe to just the chat software platform itself. We can assist with getting that set up. It's sort of designed, very much designed for libraries already. So it's very intuitive to set that up, add your users, and we can assist with like designing and deploying, the chat button itself on the site. You can adjust that over time, and then an area where we often assist libraries because they're very interested in it and we think it's something that provides value is tagging the chats with the topic that was asked about. So what was the main topic of that conversation, so that you can then report out on those things. That chat software platform also allows you to track the main KPIs. So the ones that I mentioned a few minutes ago, like what's our average answer time, what's our resolution rate, those types of numbers can all be tracked then within the reporting module of the live chat, of the Unique Chat platform. So you've got all that stuff at your fingertips. What are folks asking about? How well are we performing at answering the chats? And then do we have people online, or were there gaps where we should have had someone online but we didn't? And kind of keeping track of that, because again, that coverage component and having enough people online to answer quickly is so crucial. One footnote I would just say, just putting this out there for you, those of you who may think about doing the chat yourself. Again, I think that's the best option if you're able to devote the resources to it and make that happen. But what we do see is that even for very large urban libraries, the chats aren't coming in like a back to back to back, one after another. They come in fits and starts through the day. Sometimes it's very unpredictable when they're going to arrive. So that's why, for many libraries, using Unique as something of a shared resource makes sense. The financial component of it makes good sense. It's predictable and relatively affordable. And then, we're able to do it at scale and answer chats and phone calls for dozens and dozens of libraries. And we're just kind of set up to do that and have the capacity to do it. So our folks actually are pretty consistently busy. In our world of operating like a contact center, an inbound contact center, if your operators are busy 50% of the time, you're killing it. Like you're operating at peak efficiency. So all that to say, like, if you kind of if you have people like say rotating through a chat workstation, when you're taking this seriously, that's great. That's the best option if you're able to devote that type of resource. But like they're not going to be getting chats back to back to back, at least initially, because any one library doesn't have like enough website traffic to make that happen. However, like I said, making the chat as pervasive as possible on the main domain and subdomains is critical. We do see across our library partners that roughly 50% of their website traffic is actually on the catalog side rather than on the main website side. So having it available there is crucial to really growing the audience and making it available for as many patrons as possible. And then when they're searching the catalog, that's often where they do have questions and need some help anyway. So having it present there can be very strategic in terms of just kind of optimizing patron adoption of the service.
All right, thank you. I think that's going to be it for the Q&A. I'll say just before Josh wraps up that everyone here can expect an email with a lot of this recording and some links to Josh's calendar afterwards. Josh, you got any final remarks?
Just to appreciate you all joining us today. And again, please do feel free to schedule a consultation with me. That's 30 minutes that we'll take to plot together the best way forward for you to really kind of open up additional access and welcome to digital patrons.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us this Wednesday afternoon, and you'll be hearing from us shortly. Bye-bye.